and our Sergeant at Arms are all here to assist. We'll begin today's board meeting with the county's land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano
of the meeting. Members of the public, it is your right to participate in today's board hearing, and the board encourages such participation. However, the right of the public to address the board must be balanced with the need to ensure that public comment does not interfere with the orderly course of the board's business.
Please call 877-692-8955 and use participant code number 4433663. Members of the public participating remotely and in the boardroom, you will have the opportunity to address the board throughout the meeting. You will receive up to 1 minute to address the board on each of the public hearing and held items, 1 minute to comment on the remaining consent item and the closed session item, and 1 additional minute for general public comment. Please note, once your time has expired, we will immediately move to the next speaker. For members of the public joining us remotely, when the board moves to the item you wish to address, promptly press 1, then 0 to be entered into the speaking queue.
Members of the public and colleagues, before we go into closed session, we'll take up public comment on the closed session item only. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1, then 0 now to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who have signed up to speak on our closed session item.
Madam Chair, there are no in-person speakers who have signed up for this item. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
First participant comes from Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yeah, thank you, supervisors. I know you're going into a closed session today, and we're not exactly sure, but I was listening carefully to the land acknowledgement, and I read that the Quiche Nation has filed a lawsuit against the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, the county, that's us, and the nonprofit LA Plaza de Cultura y Arte. This is very embarrassing. 100 graves were piled together in the back of the place, as opposed to, which is a direct
Our closed session item is about the proposed fire ballot measure. So if you could focus your comments on that item, that's what's on our closed session agenda. Thank you.
Well, you have a closed session that's unanticipated litigation. Is that not? I'm sorry. You've interrupted me now. I'm going to have to reorient myself. Anyway, I think that it's important to air out what these lawsuits are about, because as you know, you've amassed an enormous compounding liability, like a credit card swelling with debt, thanks to county councils.
Your time has expired.
Forward to
next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other remote speakers in queue to address the board.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment on the closed session item. Executive Officer, please read us into closed session. Please press 1, then 0 now to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 1 is a hearing on the fiscal year 2023-24 hazardous vegetation and defensible space abatement enforcement charges to confirm the Agricultural Commissioner weights and measures and the Consolidated Fire Protection District's hazardous vegetation and defensible space abatement costs to be assessed to owners of designated parcels of land or improved parcels. No departmental statement was submitted and correspondence was received.
Are there any supervisors who'd like to make comments on this item? Seeing none, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who have signed up to speak on this item.
Will the following individual please come forward? Red Chief Hunt, please come forward and staff will assist you. Moderator, when we have the first remote speaker, please.
Our first participant is Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yeah, thank you. FYI, you're not supposed to go in to talk about item 5 without it being agendized as a closed session. I don't know if that's what you were talking about, Mr. Yin. That's not kosher. But this one, there is a little bit of opposition. People from Castaic have said that this has been a non-sufficiently funded situation for years, but reducing the amount of service puts zones in a downward spiral. And apparently this guy lives in 37. I'm looking at your own public comment. By having public hearings in this strange environment that are kind of a little wonky, and as you see, there's no speakers, I think what you do is you push away the public. First a closed session to marinate. People don't have no idea. You're going to go in there for a long time. And then this kind of thing. So why don't you keep the current assessments? Don't go for this increase. And try to follow the Brown Act. And maybe Harrison could announce her interpretation of the Brown Act as it relates to committees per last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other remote speakers in queue to address the board.
With that, it would be appropriate to close the public hearing and vote on this item. Item 1 is before us, moved by Supervisor Barger, seconded by Supervisor Unkn to approve the item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Supervisor Salis?
Aye.
Supervisor Salis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Unkn?
Aye.
Supervisor Unkn, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
We'll now move on to item 2. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 2 is a hearing on the annual levying and collection of assessments for all zones identified in the fiscal year 2024-25 Engineers Report within County Landscaping and Lighting Act Districts 1, 2, and 4, including any changes and the improvements, the proposed diagrams, or the proposed assessments. A departmental statement was submitted and correspondence was received.
Are there any supervisors who'd like to make comments on this item? Seeing none, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who have signed up to speak on this item.
Will the following individual please come forward? Red Chief Hunt, please come forward and staff will assist you. Moderator, we have the first remote speaker, please.
Our first participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I gave my comment on this one in I was speaking about item 2. So item 1 is the abatement of hazardous vegetation. Is it okay if I speak on that? Or now everything is so confused.
No, we announced item 1 at that time, and now we're on item 2, so you would need to focus your comments on item 2.
All right, let me focus my comments on item 2. Item 2 follows item 1, which I really wanted to talk about earlier, but I got screwed up and started talking about 2. Anyway, all of this is about raising money, and what I thought was interesting was to get Kirk Lorain involved. It's always nice to have weights and measures balancing a little bit to sort of help out. And I know the fire department are the ones who have the structural problem. So we thank Mr. Lorain for being willing to assess people. But I don't know how we're going to solve the structural fire problem on a larger basis.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Andrea Mc Pherson. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yes, I believe that the previous gentleman, he was confused about the items because on the agenda, it basically says administrative matter, and that's item number 4. And I wanted to speak about that. I am in favor of it. Again, my name is Andrea Mc Pherson. I used to be a co-chair of the Department of Mental Health Service Area Leadership Team 5 and executive co-chair with LA Care. Please better the way of life. We are struggling with unethical practices from business and our own consumer
This item
protection.
is on the annual levying of assessments for county landscaping and lighting districts, so you would need to focus your comments on that item, please.
I'll wait to item 4 is called. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next speaker.
Madam Chair, there are no other remote speakers in queue to address the board.
Okay, then it would be appropriate to close the public hearing and vote on this item. Item 2 is before us, moved by Supervisor Mitchell, seconded by Supervisor Salis. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Supervisor Salis?
Aye.
Supervisor Salis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Unkn?
Aye.
Supervisor Unkn, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 3. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on item 3. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 3 is a hearing on ordinance for adoption amending County Code Title 12 Environmental Protection to increase the annual fees for hazardous waste generators, hazardous materials, California accidental release prevention programs, and above-ground petroleum storage tank facilities, and add an exemption to section 12.64.040 in chapter 12.64. No departmental statement was submitted and correspondence was received.
With that, are there any supervisors who would like to make remarks on this item? Seeing none, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who have signed up to speak on this item, item 3.
Will Red Chief Hunt please come forward and staff will assist you? Moderator, we have the first remote speaker, please.
Our first participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. And it goes up to about $539 from $520, this rate. And I note the exemption for restaurants that make CO2 go into the Coca-Cola, for example, because they do deal with the hazardous material, but in a limited way that people accept. So I think that this is a decent idea. The idea that not-for-profits don't have to comply with parts of this particular ordinance worries me, because I know that the foundation of everything you do is safety and equity. So I don't quite understand. I mean, I don't want to saddle not-for-profits with horrible fees, but you saddle everybody with horrible fees. So I'm wondering if that's kosher even, to just kind of decide, oh, well, if they're not making money, they don't have to comply. And I probably have that wrong, but feel free to clarify it. And thank you for your diligence on this stuff. And soda is not good for the young people. So just to point out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other remote speakers in queue to address the board.
With that, it would be appropriate to close the public hearing and vote on this item. Item 3 is before us. I will move it, seconded by Supervisor Hahn. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Hahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 4. County Code Title 8, Consumer Protection, Business and Wage Regulations, adding Chapter 8.60, Tenant Right to Counsel, which will be taken up with item 6, County Code Title 8, Consumer Protection, Business and Wage Regulations Amendment, which were held by Supervisor Mitchell. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on these items. Rafael Carbajal, Director of Consumer and Business Affairs, and Kelly Lobianco, Director of Economic Opportunity, are available for questions. Supervisor Mitchell, I will turn it to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you for reading, since we've had some members of the public confused about what item is being addressed. I'm glad that you clarified that this is the tenant right to counsel, to establish a program to provide legal counsel for covered individuals in the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County during eviction proceedings. So thank you again, Madam Chair. And today's right to counsel ordinance makes the county's existing Stay Housed LA program an ongoing program for tenants to have the tools and supports necessary to stay in their homes. I'm very proud to be a part of a board that continues to be a leader in strategies to keep people who are housed in their homes. We often talk about trying to stem the tide of people entering houselessness. So this effort is really important. And increase permanent housing options through preservation and new construction. Keeping our focus on solutions that work is key to solving for the housing crisis impacting every county resident. I'd like to thank Supervisor Salis for co-authoring the July 2023 motion that I brought forward, as well as the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs and County Council for all their work in drafting a very comprehensive ordinance. And finally, I'd like to thank the residents and the advocates, who many of you are here today, and many who have expressed support for this kind of effort over an extended period of time. You have been instrumental in helping us get here today. So So why is this important? The Right to Counsel ordinance is part of a larger vision to achieve universal access to legal representation for every Angelino in both civil and criminal cases, where LA residents, regardless of income, will have the ability to access affordable legal services. This ordinance is a significant step towards realizing this vision for civil cases. Though, as I underscored last summer, we cannot forget about our constitutional duty to provide attorneys for all persons facing criminal charges. As many Angelinos know all too well, legal representation in housing is expensive and unaffordable to too many working people, and it continues to be an equity issue. We know that Black and Latin people experience the highest rates of eviction compared to other racial groups. And we also know what an eviction on your record does to you. Read an amazing book a number of years ago, Evicted, where it equated an eviction to a Black woman is equivalent to a felony charge to a Black man in terms of your ability to just move in the world, to get future housing, to get school loans, to just do any number of things that we all probably far too often take for granted. According to DCBA, from May 2022 through today, Stay Housed LA has facilitated over 1,800 full-scope legal cases for county residents who live outside the city of Los Angeles. Nearly 97% of these have resulted in either the tenant staying in their home or a favorable settlement to move to a new place. This data demonstrates this program's important impact for our county residents. I'm pleased the Stay Housed LA program has secured funding for fiscal year 24-25, which means Right to Counsel will be funded in its first year. I think that's really important to note that we've got the funding for 24-25. However, additional ongoing funding will need to be established for future years. It's my hope that if Measure A passes in November, it is a funding option for La Casa to consider, which would be a good thing. But why pass the ordinance now? Well, if we pass it now, it'll place the Stay Housed LA program and the Right to Counsel in line for the county's fiscal resiliency prioritization process for future budget cycles in the event the Measure A option doesn't pan out, but I hope that's not the case. So I'll continue to remind my colleagues that Right to Counsel, it really is important to be funded so we can make sure that this service can be provided to our residents. The board, in concert with the advocates across policy areas who work hard every day to fight for housing, economic, and criminal justice, must continue to align and prioritize the full spectrum of tools that supports all aspects of housing across all funding sources and in our county budget. Right to Counsel is just one of the many tools the county really should employ to keep people housed and to meet the diverse.
Thank you, and thank you, Kelly, for that response in terms of getting a report to us that's going to be thoughtful and encompass really a lot of the issues that we don't necessarily think of when we're putting together a proposal, so I appreciate that. I'm just curious, Rocky, this was for you. How, we've got through LACTA, the public housing, how does the program propose to resolve issues related to LACTA evictions where the county is funding the tenant's right to counsel and also is the landlord? I'm more curious than...
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. That's been an active discussion that we've been having both on this dais a few months ago and then collectively with our partners. So this program actually doesn't impact LACTA because the decision has been made not to include administrative hearings as covered proceedings for the right to counsel. That not to say that we don't work regularly with the LACDA. Emilio and I can consistently connect over our overlapping programs to ensure that they're as efficient and effective as possible. As a matter of fact, my team and his team are currently working together to make sure that there's some synthesis and effective communication between both of us to ensure that both his programs are operating effectively.
Excellent. And then the county has been running, the pilot program Stay Housed LA for more than 3 years. And I know you cited 6,600 that we've been able to stay housed. Do you know the total amount of evictions filed in the unincorporated areas, and how many of those cases were upheld by the court? And how is DCBA working with the courts to compile and use all this data?
Yeah, access to data, unlawful detainer data, has been something that we've been working on for a long time. Even we had a bill that made it to the governor's desk, where actually was vetoed, that would have provided us access to that data. But we've built a really good relationship with our partners at courts right now. And as of last year, they've been trying to provide us their data on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the way that they gather their data is not as nuanced enough where we could drill down to the unincorporated, but we could make some estimates of the 43,000 evictions that were filed last year. We would estimate about 20% of those if we look at population basis. But we are looking to make sure we're able to drill down. As a matter of fact, my team actually met yesterday with the courts team on the data and trying to figure out how we could best help them give us the right information. But this is something that we're looking to do on a regular basis, on a yearly basis, not only for the unincorporated, but for the entirety of the county, so we can share with other municipality, our partners, and your staff to help inform decisions around this work.
Yeah, I think it'd be important for us to find out maybe if there's root causes or things that we can do to prevent people from facing eviction. So that data, I think, I would feel that data would be very important moving forward in terms of lessons learned and where we need to look at maybe issues when Kelly's putting a report together that were unintended consequences or things that we can help to prevent.
Absolutely agree, and I think a combination of that data with our rent registry will help us inform who the owners are, who the folks that are being impacted, and what are those common issues that we could try to address up front.
Great, thank you for that. And then, Fizia, I know that the budget, this is ARPA funds, and is a proposal for it to stay flat at a specific amount or fluctuate? And then if so, I know, and I appreciate Supervisor Mitchell highlighting that we're looking at the Measure H as possibly backfilling because it would qualify for keeping people from ending up on the streets, and it checks both the box for housing as well as for prevention. How are you building that into the budget beyond the 2 years? You know, what ifs, the what ifs.
So thank you, Supervisor. We looked at the DCBA report from April of 2023, and in that report, there is a projected forecast that this cost would increase for the program over time, up to upwards of about, I think it's 65 million in that ballpark. The program is currently funded, as you indicated, for this current fiscal year, which is going to end on June 30th, 2025. And so what we would need to do is start looking for funding for the period that begins July 1st, 2025. That would be an NCC ask, and we would incorporate.
If this goes beyond just unincorporated and countywide, Measure H would be eligible under the existing formula.
So maybe I misunderstood Supervisor Mitchell. I thought that what she was saying was that under Measure A,
she was. But I'm saying even beyond 2025, Measure H, this would qualify for Measure H dollars as a possible backfill.
So that would basically be a policy decision of the board. Correct. And essentially what it would do is it would shift money to the prevention side of the house, and it would reduce Measure H funding available for those that are already in the homeless system.
But if it was made countywide and cities could access this money, then we would have a policy across the county, so it wouldn't be piecemeal. Because right now this is just unincorporated, correct?
So two distinctions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Raphael, there are two versions of this program. One is universal access, and the pilot right now is for universal access for all cities, all unincorporated areas, and that is the cost estimate going forward. That would be for all cities and programs. There's another, I think, concept of this program that would be limited to unincorporated areas.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. I mean, I definitely know that over the past couple of years, the board has dedicated significant time to addressing the rights and protections of our tenants and property owners. I want to start off by recognizing the efforts of DCBA and the Stay Housed LA program for your outstanding work in assisting tenants who need help navigating the complexities of this legal system. there is no question that it can be overwhelming and can be very daunting, and actually, in many cases, can really victimize those that don't know what their rights are. And I've witnessed firsthand the importance of providing individuals with the necessary tools and resources to support those in need. In the last year, I have visited various service providers and nonprofits in my district that assist the homeless and those at risk of losing housing. During those visits, I heard testimonials from individuals and families facing challenges with landlords over unpaid rent. Some renters wanted to relocate but simply lacked the financial means to do so, while others faced eviction solely because landlords wanted to increase their rent. Unfortunately, many of these renters did not have access to legal resources and really did feel trapped in their circumstances. And I cite programs like Door of Hope and Friends Indeed in Pasadena, who stepped in and filled that void, and they were able to help these individuals who would have ended up homeless on our streets. Prevention programs like these are vital in helping people stay housed and reducing the rate of homelessness. I believe it is crucial for the county to collaborate with local providers to bolster prevention efforts and address the rising homelessness crisis. Rent relief programs are an important part of the solution, and I want to thank Supervisor Mitchell for co-authoring a motion with me to establish a $40 million rent relief program to help tenants pay back the mom and pop property owners. I feel this board has looked at it in a balanced and fair way, recognizing that there are property owners that are put in a fiscal situation that creates a difficulty for them, and also that there are landlords that are not being good landlords as it relates to the tenants that they have. So, I believe that for those, I know that the chamber wrote a letter asking for an amendment. Have you seen that letter? Do you have any thoughts on what their amendment request is?
I don't think there's a need for amendments. Some of the items that they pointed out are things that we'll clearly outline in our guidelines and
Okay.
actually will take into consideration in the process.
Okay, because that letter was not an adamant, this is not right. It was, there are things, but if those are being addressed, I feel that, again, I'm proud that this board has taken a balanced approach in how we move these type of programs forward, recognizing that it's not as black and white as it relates to all tenants and all landlords. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Salis.
Yes, thank incorporated areas, and East Los Angeles being the largest unincorporated and highly populated, and I would say most impacted in the first district. But I want to recognize the advocacy groups that are here that have been actually so persistent, because without their help, I know we wouldn't be here today. This has been a long road for all of us and for our departments, and I just want to point them out. SAGE, Betzetic, East LA Community Corporation. Calladitos. Lift your hands. Lift your hands. Inner City Law, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County, Public Counsel, SEIU, 721, and so many other organizations that have worked on behalf of tenants and preventing them from being evicted. I want to say thank you to all of you, and for those folks that called my office and also worked with our staff and with Supervisor Mitchell's staff, and obviously moving forward to today to have this ordinance before us. I want to personally thank our Department of Consumer and Business Affairs under the leadership of Rafael Carvajal, and also our DEO. Thank you, Kelly Lobianco, for your work, and also for County Council for working very hard and diligently on bringing this ordinance here before us today. I want to thank Supervisor Mitchell for introducing the right to counsel in the motion, because it is very important. And I think that the bottom line for us is that we're really trying to prevent homelessness, because we have a crisis. We saw what the numbers were recently in terms of where the spikes were. Overall, granted, it went down a little bit, but not quite. And we know that we have more work to do. So I'm going to continue to do what I can to work with the board and help prevent and strengthen actually our eviction protections to the most vulnerable. And I think Supervisor Mitchell, you outlined that appropriately by saying that a large number of African American, Black, and Latino, Latinx individuals are heavily impacted. But what I find most concerning too is when I looked at numbers, that as you know, Black renters make up 21% of all renters and 35% of all defendants in eviction cases. And Black women have the highest eviction rates in LA County. That should be something that we really focus on here and understand who we're really impacting. But I want to go further because there was that important fact that came out of the eviction lab and some studies that they provide. And while we may have some information, we know that another portion of our community is the undocumented community is sorely underreported in evictions, and partly because they don't understand in many ways that there are resources available to them, and many would shy away from asking for assistance, thinking right off the bat, if they get any kind of public assistance, it's going to be a public charge, therefore jeopardizing their immigration status. So yes, we have to do more to protect all of our vulnerable residents, but more importantly, giving them the information as was stated in a microcosm to particular groups that need that information in their language, and to have the appropriate staff available to articulate to them in that way. We're not just one county that's thinking about this. There are already 17 cities that have adopted similar ordinances, 5 states, and I think that we're on the right track here for LA County. And I know in the 1st District it's going to matter a lot. According to DCBA, last year roughly 10,200 households were served with unlawful detainers, and knowing that about 90% of the tenants face unlawful detainers without representation. This program can potentially help up to 9,000 individuals. And in East LA, since 2020, nearly 4,000 residents have benefited or participated in tenant protections. So we know that the need is there, and we need to continue to do everything we can that we're capable of to seek other sources of funding, and also making that a priority with the board in our budget. So I am wholeheartedly in support of this. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. Thank you to all the tenants groups that are out there and all the people that are listening us today. Let's move forward and make it a great day. Thank you.
When we have the first remote speaker, please.
Our first participant is Mangi. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin. One moment. There's an error. Okay, we've got it fixed. You may begin. Go ahead, please.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Great.
Are you there? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, hi. My name is Mangi. I'm with Inner City Law Center, and we're speaking on items 4, 6, and 14. We're here to support the Tenant Right to Counsel. We represent folks who are homeless and at folks at risk of homelessness throughout LA County. And, this is the first year we've seen in many years that homelessness has declined throughout the county. This is only because of our efforts, efforts of the county and the city to build affordable housing and to keep tenants housed. We believe this right to counsel is a very important step that will allow folks to stay in their homes and to prevent evictions, prevent homelessness, and ensure greater stability for all tenants throughout LA County. This is a really important issue for Black and brown people, for low-income folks. We're seeing consistently that landlords have representation and tenants do not. This is going to equal the playing field and allow everybody to...
Your time has expired. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Janet Canyon. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin. Janet, go ahead. Your line's open.
Janet?
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Okay, and thank you for the Supervisor Mitchell and Salis throwing in the race card there and realizing that 49% of the population of Los Angeles County is Hispanic, and Mitchell's aspect about the felony on black. You need to talk to Dr. Thomas Sowell. You're a shameful person, and the idea that you're wanting to take taxpayers' money to fund this situation is abominable. And the persons have always had the right to counsel. And as far as equity goes, you can forget about it. The only way you're going to get equity is to have public housing, and that is a huge. And that would be the project that you need to be focused on and get into the world of reality on this particular situation. And instead of equity, forget about it. It's never going to exist. You haven't got it. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul and funding illegal aliens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Nina Antony. Please unmute, speak directly into your phone. You may begin. Your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. And
robbing Peter to pay Paul and funding illegal aliens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Nina Antony. Please unmute, speak directly.
I like attorneys, but the system is rigged. And if we're going to be coming up with public money, the best.
Our next participant is Nina Antony. Please unmute. The next participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. And, eviction is terrible. 44,000 is shocking. But the idea of getting this money together and helping to pay their rent was a good idea as opposed to these attorneys. Now, I like attorneys, but the system is rigged. And if we're going to be coming up with public money, the best thing that an attorney can do for a tenant who's being evicted is not always a good and ethical thing. And the mom and pop across the table knows it. But we haven't really exactly specified. So I just think that we should not be prioritizing legal resources in this way. We should be trying to protect people, yes. And there are some standards that can't be, you can't throw people out for just any reason. But it is very, very complicated. And as for Measure A, I don't know, but I'm very surprised that Supervisor Mitchell's okay with one-time funding, because we all remember as she's climbing Priority Mountain, I mean, this is not a funded program. So we did have a pandemic and an emergency, but we have an ongoing emergency.
Thank you.
I would say
your time has expired.
Something.
Next speaker, please.
Lord.
Thank you. We'll now turn to speakers in person. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for bringing forward the Right to Counsel ordinance today. My name is Joshua Fujita. I'm a resident of District 3 and a law clerk with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. I strongly support a Right to Counsel ordinance for unincorporated Los Angeles County because it is truly necessary to level the playing field between tenants and landlords in eviction cases. Every time I'm in court, I see the exact same scene play out again and again, where landlords and their attorneys ask as many questions as they want and do whatever they want and tell the court whatever they want, while the tenant's table remains empty. I wholeheartedly believe that this Right to Counsel ordinance, along with its notice requirements, will go a long way in ensuring that more tenants can have access to justice across economic and linguistic barriers. For these reasons, I ask that the board please vote yes for the Right to Counsel ordinance. Thank you and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Long time coming, but RTC has finally come. Good afternoon in every language, Board of Supervisors. My name is Mr. Herod, Mr. Pancake, rather, internationally known. LA Can, Los Angeles native, housing, homeless, organizer, advocate. Thank you, Holly Mitchell, Hilda Solis Warbeck for leading the charge for tenant RTC ordinance. Keep LA housed, keep tenants first. Los Angeles rent is too high. Strongly support representation for tenants facing eviction. Last but not least, understanding that this is unincorporated cities, but pushing for incorporated cities to step it up. Can I get it right on?
Right on. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Grace Estrella, and I live in...
Thank you, the Red Chief Hun. Thank you for working with the community, and thank you for the unity. Thank all of you guys for voting yes on this. but thank all the people out here. Clap your hands, you guys, because you guys stood up for yourself. And that's what it's all about, standing up for yourself. If you can't stand up for yourself, then you're nothing. But to all the Board of Supervisors, this is a good one. Vote yes on it. I get an aye vote from everybody, and we're going to make a difference for all these people. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors. Red Chief on Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, this is a very important ordinance, so right to care. Okay, this is a very important ordinance, so right to counsel is appreciated, but there are many factors that can prevent even the last minute assistance to tenants. So regulation of landlords. So you have people like Jeff Palmer. A lot of the apartments that they own, they need repair, and then when the tenants complain about it, nothing's being done, and then they're retaliated against. And sometimes they face unnecessary eviction. So this step in assisting them with counsel is good, but again, we have to have more regulation on the landlords, on who really is owning these properties. It's not just about money, but it's about integrity. So the Tenant Protections Act, a lot of that was violated by landlords. And again, when you see them in the court system, you see a big difference in representation. So we thank you again for the county for really looking at the tenants' rights and helping each and every low income and families in need. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Olivia Corbett. I'm a tenant of a dishonest land.
Supervisor Salis to approve the item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Hahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. With that, both items have passed, and we will now move on to item 5. If you are not staying for this item, please depart quietly so we can continue our agenda. Special Parcel Tax Initiative Ordinance Petition. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on these items. I first want to turn to County Council for clarification on discussion on this item.
Thank you, Supervisor. It was incorrectly stated earlier that we were discussing the fire district measure in closed session. That statement was corrected by the executive officer, who clearly stated that the board was adjourning to closed session to discuss anticipated litigation. I want to just further state for the record that the board did not discuss the fire district measure in closed session. Rather, what was discussed under anticipated litigation was an exposure to litigation matter that was brought to the attention of this board by my office. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any supervisors who would like to make remarks? I know that a couple of my colleagues wanted to hold this item so we had further discussion. So I'll turn it to you, Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you.
Please call the members of the public who've signed up to speak on these items.
Will the following individuals please come forward? Dave Galati and Red Chief Hunt, please come forward and staff will assist you. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking at this is a petition of signatures to get this one to come on the ballot to raise money, much needed money to address the structural problem. But then I think you slapped it down before the signatures is what's required. I'm a little bit confused, to be 100% honest, but I wanted to report that over across the street, Mayor Batts vetoed a ballot measure going about the police board across the street. So I don't think that there's any question about that here, but I would ask the board to ruminate on that. Who would be the one to veto a bill, like something like this, at the Board of Supervisors without an elected CEO? So I don't know. Or even could an elected CEO veto something that the great Board of Supervisors they want to do anyway? Anyway, thanks for trying to solve the problem of the shortage of resources and appalling neglect that's been applied to the fire department. Thank you.
Moderator, are there any other virtual speakers?
Madam Chair, there are no other remote speakers in queue to address the board.
Thank you. We'll go to speakers in person. Please go ahead. Oh, let's make sure his mic is on.
Is that on?
Yes.
Good morning, Honorable Madam Chair and Supervisors. My name is Dave Gelati, and I'm the President of LA County Firefighters Local 1014. I represent over 3,400 men and women who protect and serve our diverse communities in all 5 districts.
From our fire chief.
Good afternoon, Your Honorable Board. So, as Forester and Fire Warden of the Fire District, I'm here to speak to the need for structural stability when it comes to the fire department's budget. When I was appointed as fire chief back in March of 2023, we did have a projected budget deficit, a structural deficit, whereby our ongoing revenue was not enough to keep up with our ongoing expenditures. The department has significant need when it comes to personnel, training, equipment, and the need to also expand our paramedic services in the communities that we serve. Over the last 15 years, we have experienced a 45% increase in the number of emergency medical service calls to the fire district. However, we have not kept up with the expansion of our paramedic services in our hometown fire stations that are located throughout the district and in the unincorporated areas. So additional revenue is desperately needed by the fire district. Even though we do have a budget of $1.6 billion, we did have a projected structural deficit in 2023 of $18 million. Myself and Chief Deputy Teresa Barrera of our business operations section, we did implement.
I thought we already had public comment, right? Okay. Just making sure. Item 5 is before us, moved by, as I indicated. Anything else? Okay, please call the roll.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Hahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. And we'll now hear from members of the public wishing to address the board on general public comment. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on these items. Executive officer, please read the call-in information and call the members of the public who have signed up to speak on general public comment.
Members of the public, you will have 1 minute to address the board on general public comment. Please state your name. You may only address the board on this item. We will now call in-person speakers, and while they are coming forward, we will take telephonic speakers.
Will the following individuals please come forward? Ari Stock, Carlota Jarman, Diane Zimmerman, Dr. Critical Truthbay. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first participant is Paul Hennessy. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi. On the topic of fires, I'd like to see LA County do more to address indoor air quality, which will reduce the spread of not just wildfire smoke, but also pollution, smog, and pathogens. LA County should consider incentivizing businesses, schools, and medical settings to perform indoor air quality inspections and upgrades with ASHRAE 241 standards, MER 14 HVAC filters, HEPA filters, and FAR UVC. Bills to incentivize this through tax codes or otherwise could create cleaner air, which would lead to fewer absences in schools, fewer sick days at the workplace. Clean indoor air will make spaces more accessible for the most vulnerable in our communities. Lower CO2 levels in the classroom also should have been shown to make children more attentive. Let's have LA lead the nation and protect from pollutants, microplastics, pathogens, and wildfire smoke, all of which are harmful to breathe in. Finally, I'd like to voice my support for permanent mask mandates in healthcare settings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Eric Preven. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. It is Eric Preven from Studio City, and I was just following up on last week's meeting when we announced that we would be getting an opinion from the Greene County Council about the interpretation of the Brown Act as it relates to a 5-member body and committees, because I know there was some disagreement between the supervisors, and we all will get very confused and upset when there's disagreement among the supervisors, which is why we look to Harrison for the clarity on that. And I'm standing by and waiting, and I'm prepared to cede a few seconds of my time to get an answer. And thank you all for your diligence.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next participant is Lorain. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lorain Quinones, a constituent out of District 1, and I am calling to follow up directly with Supervisor Hilda Salis. On October 18, 2022, the board approved Assembly Resolution 176, honoring that, the history of car cruising and the culture of low riding, and there was a 90-day plan that the LA County Public Works was put into place to roll this out. We did go ahead and have our first 3 meetings with the LA County Board of District 1 and Public Works. We are supposed to have the meeting number 4 and meeting number 5 that were scheduled for December and winter. They have not occurred, and as you all know, Assembly Bill 436, Cruising is Not a Crime, did pass January 1st, 2024. The 90-day plan is well overdue, and I have not had any follow-up regarding
Your time has
the
expired.
plan.
Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Humphreys. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Okay, thank you for all you good things that you do, but I'll reiterate about those who want to play the race card need to drop that like yesterday. Also to thank Supervisor Barger for bringing some civility and clarity into the conversation on more than one occasion on that. And to Eric Preven. Eric, I'm willing to go with you to file a criminal complaint with the state of California because I believe this body has felony liability as far as the obstruction of the people's right under the act regarding a public address situation on that. So, and I do believe they need to do some jail time to get some real flavor, and they're well deserving of it. The absolute arrogance and contempt that they've shown the people that they represent. A little jail time is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.